Hi, my name is Joseph. I'm the managing partner of Joseph and Joseph. We are a full service firm and IP is one of our core areas of our practice. Today, the topic that the virtual lawyer has put forth for discussion is protection of trademark in India. Now, for this, I have set out a small list of areas which I would like to focus on because the subject is very vast. Just to begin with, we're going to discuss the various types of trademarks, conventions covering trademarks, the registration process for trademarks, thereafter, what constitutes violation of a trademark in India, what are the processes for enforcement of trademarks in India, and grounds, or these are based on certain judgments where we're talking about certain grounds based on which the courts have held what constitutes an infringement or a passing off, and a couple of other rights which are very new to the industry and very new to the Trademarks Act also, which has come up in the last maybe a decade. Then we will go on to discussing how to protect your trademark in foreign countries under the Madrid Protocol, and then I'll give you a brief conclusion on the entire subject. So to begin with, we'll go to the various types of trademarks. So primarily the definition of a trademark comes in the nature of basically a trademark means a mark capable of being represented graphically and which is capable of distinguishing the goods of one person from another. So from that we clearly get to understand that a trademark primarily identifies the product, good or service of a particular company or an individual and differentiates it from the others. Depending on its quality, its performance, it earns goodwill. So that's the basic definition of a trademark. Trademark can be in the form of a name, a logo or a device. It could be a composite trademark where it involves the combination of a logo along with the word and the brand and the name. Then we have collective trademarks. Now these are owned by a group or an association of people. For example, we have Amul. Thereafter we come to certification trademarks. So certification trademarks are basically verifying the quality of a particular product or service, such as what we very commonly have been seen in India over all these years is the ISI trademark, ISI mark, and also for gold where we have the hallmark logo. Something new that has come up in the last decade or so is where we're talking about sound and smell trademarks. For example, the 3 notes of Britannia, ICICI, the ICICI opening note, the jingle, which was the first Indian entity to get a sound mark registered. Harley Davidson exhaust sound is also registered as a sound mark. Now, since the internet age, we have domain names coming in, but domain names are also registered as, have been recognized as trademarks because they define the business of the entity. Then we have 3D fictional characters, trade dress, etc., which we'll explain later. Now the process of registration. You basically, primarily we conduct a search to see whether the availability of the trademark is there for the particular product or the service. Post that, we file the TM application with the trademark office. Once the application is filed, there is an office action or an objection which might be raised under Section 9 or Section 11 of the Trademark Act. Section 9 primarily pertains to absolute ground of refusal and Section 11 pertains to relative grounds of refusal. So absolute grounds of refusal is what we are talking about, where the mark primarily is devoid of any distinctive character. The marks or indications which may serve in trade to designate the kind of quality, quantity, intended purpose, values, or the geographical origin or the time of production of the goods and services. Section 11 are relative grounds of refusal, which is identical with or similar to an earlier trademark. So that's where the concept of similarity or deceptive similarity comes into place. Once this leg is crossed, we come to the stage where there is an opposition under Section 21. Now, for example, in our case itself, we face the situation where our very own logo, which is J&J within a circle, was objected by a pretty big company, where they said that we cannot use the J&J logo because it is very similar to their logo. But considering the fact that we were providing legal services and they were into FMCG goods, the matter did not go further and it was settled between the parties. So any case of opposition can be raised by any third party or any person who is interested in that particular trademark. There is a fixed period, a limitation period for filing the opposition, which is 4 months. Then we come to rectification. Once a trademark is registered, any person aggrieved by the absence or omission from the register of any entry, or by any entry made in the register without sufficient cause, or by any entry wrongly remaining on the register, can be removed by any interested party. So that is the process which is provided for under Section 57 of the Act. Similarly is a case of cancellation. Earlier trademarks there used to be something known as defensive registration. So defensive registration primarily is where you have registered a trademark under the garb of using it or proposed to be used, but you basically want to sell that trademark to somebody who's interested later. So having said that, the law has been amended to avoid such defensive registration. So now any person who has registered a trademark and has not used the trademark for a period of more than 5 years, any interested person can have that trademark cancelled. Same under the provision of Section 57 of the Act. Now we come to what constitutes violation of trademarks. So primarily infringement of trademark, which comes under Section 29 of the Act. So once I am a registered trademark owner, in that case nobody can use that particular mark which has been granted to me by the registry. Nobody can use that mark without my permission by way of a license or an assignment. So any unauthorized use of such registered trademark tantamounts to infringement. Now, infringement could be basically unauthorized use. It could be using a similar or deceptive similar trademark. It could also amount to brands which are being sold as counterfeits under the same brand name. It could also be in parallel imports. So parallel imports are basically, for example, let's say there's a shoe manufacturer of a global brand who's opened up a unit in India or is importing directly to India and selling under a particular brand. But there is another party who's not authorized to import or is not authorized to use that brand, simultaneously imports that brand from a different country and dumps them in the market. So that tantamounts to parallel imports. Now the second leg of violation is the case of passing off. This is primarily in cases where the trademark is not registered. Now the main difference in the case of infringement and passing off is the onus of proof. In the case of infringement, if I am the registered trademark owner, I don't need to prove my ownership. It can simply, the courts directly assume that the brand belongs to me because I'm registered with a government body. So the onus of proof lies on the defendant, that he is authorized or he was a prior user to use that particular mark. But in the case of passing off, the person claiming passing off, the onus of proof is on that person to show that he is the owner or the prior owner of that particular trademark. Now, there are several reliefs we can get when we want to enforce our trademark, the primary being injunction. Now, in a case that was covered by the Apex Court, in the name being Gujarat Bottling Company and the Coca-Cola Company, they had laid certain guidelines down for the grant of an injunction. So particularly quoting the particular Apex Court, the grant of an interlocutory injunction during the pendency of legal proceedings is a matter requiring the exercise of discretion of the court. Whilst exercising the discretion, the court has to apply the following tests. Number one being whether the plaintiff has a prima facie case, whether the balance of convenience is in favor of the plaintiff, and whether the plaintiff would suffer any irreparable injury if his request for an interlocutory injunction were disallowed. So basically, in a layman's language, what this tantamounts is I am an owner of a brand, I have a right to use that brand granted by the trademark office. Now, prima facie, do I have a case? Being that I put my registration on record, thereafter I have put sufficient evidence on record to show that the defendant is selling similar products using my same brand, and the fact that whether if he continues to do so, is he going to damage my reputation, is he going to damage my goodwill, also to the extent of what he can cause me monetary losses. Second, along with the injunction, what normally we would do is get a local commissioner appointed, particularly in cases where we want to seize goods. So a local commissioner is appointed by the court. Generally, a lawyer itself is appointed as a local commissioner and is directed to go to the premises of the particular infringer. So there he has the right to seize the infringing products, documents pertaining to the infringing products, and put them as evidence before the court. He basically files an affidavit, and in that affidavit the entire description of the goods seized, the documents seized are laid out and submitted to the court, which subsequently is used as evidence during the time of trial. One more interesting thing which a lot of people might not be aware is something known as John Doe orders. So the first John Doe order was passed by the Delhi High Court in 2002 in the matter of Tej Television versus Ranjan Mandal. So a John Doe order is basically, in normal cases, I would approach the court and seek an order against a particular individual, company or institution. Whereas in a John Doe order, I basically am going to seek an order against unknown persons. So instead of filing multiple cases on the same trademark, I am able to add on additional defendants based on that order and my raids or my investigations that happen after I get the order. Another interesting aspect is where the customs officials have very actively been involved to seize infringing goods pertaining to parallel imports into this country. So the customs officials we approach the customs official, file an official complaint, and they seize goods at the docks itself or at the customs warehouses. So the goods are virtually, they don't even hit the local market before which they are seized. Other alternate options are you can file a complaint with the local police. You can approach the court under a 156 application under CRPC to basically direct the police to undertake investigations. Now coming back to the case of infringements, in addition to the grounds above that I had mentioned, there is a very famous judgment known as the Cadila judgment. It's the Cadila Healthcare versus Cadila Pharmaceuticals. It's passed by the Supreme Court of India, where the Supreme Court laid down certain factors for an action of passing off on the basis of an unregistered trademark. The nature of trademarks, that is whether the marks are word marks or label marks, the degree of resemblance between the marks phonetically, the nature of goods in respect of which they are used as trademarks, the similarity in the nature, character and performance of the goods of rival traders, the class of purchasers who are likely to buy the goods bearing the marks they require. So in pharma products primarily, this is a very important aspect because in case the goods names are, the products names are similar, there could be a case where there could be a confusion other than in Schedule H drugs where you can actually buy them off the counter in India. So this is a very big aspect which the courts have always considered in pharmaceutical matters, to see the class of purchasers, the mode of purchasing the goods or placing orders for the goods, and any other surrounding circumstances which may be relevant in the extent of dissimilarity between the competing marks are considered. Now we come to other certain rights where we are talking about celebrity rights, fictional character names and well-known marks. Now everybody will be very familiar with Daler Mehndi. So he has a company known as DM Entertainment. So during the time Daler Mehndi was very famous, there were people who were basically manufacturing dolls and replicas of Daler Mehndi and selling them in the market. Now, that was determined to be a violation and detrimental to the interest of DM Entertainment on the count that it was affecting their affecting their goodwill, it is affecting their revenue, it is affecting their trademark and their rights which they had to exhaust at their end. Then fictional characters and names like Noddy, Harry Potter, Superman, etc. have also been given a lot of recognition. In a particular case that we handled was pertaining to the character Noddy. Unfortunately, we were on the defendant side where our client had started a school under the name of Noddy. But unfortunately, the brand owners Noddy had sued us on that count. But though we took the ground that we are on a different classification, we are not providing the same services or the goods, still it was held that Noddy, being a recognized fictional character, nobody can use that particular brand or name for any other purpose. Now we come to well-known marks. Now in well-known marks, earlier the determination of a well-known mark was done by the court. It was not done by any other defined body. But now under the new rule under 124 of the Trademark Rules 2017, an owner can apply to the TM office to recognize his trademark as a well-known trademark by paying an official fee. So until now, only the courts recognize this, but now if a person feels his mark is popular, there's a lot of goodwill attached to his mark, they can approach the trademark office to be declared as a well-known mark. So the benefit of a well-known mark is it gets across the class recognition. So whether they might be selling goods and services in 4 or 5 classes, they get protection under the entire classification of the rules. Now coming to the benefit of filing a trademark abroad under the Madrid Protocol. So India being a member to the TRIPS agreement and which flowed out from the GATT and the WTO, India has been a signatory since the very beginning, and based on that, based on the fact that being a member with the Madrid Protocol, an international application can be filed on the IP India website designating the country who are members of the Madrid Union, where the applicant wishes to file their particular mark. So this process has, so technically if you try to file a trademark abroad, let's say you want to file it in 4 countries, the cost of filing and the process of filing are enormous compared to India. So having said that, the benefit of the Madrid Union is you could file a single application, application, and then it can be processed in the number of countries you intend to file it in. So that reduces your cost substantially. It gives you effective brand management, commercialization. Now going back to protecting your brand, as I mentioned earlier, it is very important for you to realize and be aware of your brand. Now how do you do that? Firstly, there are a lot of companies who are doing where they do watch services, or they regularly keep a watch on the trademark journals and even on the market to see whether their brand is being misused or is somebody attempting to file a similar brand. So like I said earlier, you have the right to an opposition in 4 months from the time when the mark is advertised in the journals. So during that time, if you are aware enough and you're watching out, you can comfortably file an opposition action giving the reasons why that particular brand should not be registered, more so because it might affect your goodwill and it might be similar or deceptively similar to your mark and could also be in the same class or classification of goods and services. Secondly, keeping a market aware approach. We regularly conduct audits and check around the market for our clients where we look out for products, anything similar or deceptively similar that are there in the market. That helps you identifying the infringement at a very early level, at a nascent level. Once you do that, it becomes easier for you to approach the court, thereby ensuring that there is no delay in your approach to the court. Despite the fact that you might be a registered trademark, the courts are not inclined much to entertain you if you were aware of the infringement at a much prior time but did not pursue it. So, even though delay is not detrimental to the case, but courts have taken the view that if you have approached the court with substantial delay or inordinate delay, in those circumstances, the court are not favorable in granting injunction. You might succeed eventually, but all during the time of the litigation and the trial, there is no injunction on the other party and he's open to sell his goods using your brand or a similar brand as yours. So delay is a very important factor that everybody should really take into consideration so as to avoid the chance of getting an injunction. Now coming to raid actions. So raid actions again involves a lot of investigation depending on the nature of the products or the goods and services. So what you need to do is do market purchases, keep again your eyes open in the market to identify the products, do mock purchases, and then once you identify the targets, as I said earlier, you could approach the criminal courts or the civil court to conduct these seizures of goods, which thereby become paramount evidence in the case of trial. So in certain cases, we have also done this where the parties, instead of going into litigation, have initially, when the goods were seized, approached us or approached the client and said that okay, they would stop doing such nefarious activities, and they gave an undertaking. So that undertaking is sufficient for a lot of companies, so that they have ensured that the infringers particularly are aware that the company is watching, and they generally tend to shift their focus from A product to a B product. So the fact that you have to keep the market aware, you have to let the infringers know that you are actively involved in protecting your brand is very essential to protecting your IP, be it trademark, copyright, patent, whichever be the case. So in raid actions, there are times when you need to take police assistance also, because considering the location and considering the nature of the area, in which case the police also, based on a court order, accompany you for the actions. That helps you ensure the security of your team and also of the people involved in the raid. However, it is very essential to ensure that during the raid process, when you have seized the good, the entire list of the goods that are seized, that is prepared and submitted with the complaint to the concerned police station, so that tomorrow there is no bifurcation of those goods, or there is no destruction of those goods whilst the matter is pending. So having said that, those are your primary options of protecting your trademark in India. And civil remedy is time consuming, but criminal remedy, in addition to being effective on an immediate level, also ensures that the people do not repeat those offenses to a great extent. It does not say that it takes the player out of the market, because the margins and the scope is very high. You know, for example, a particular engine mounting of a vehicle, it might be costing, let's say, 6,000 rupees in the official showroom. But for the guy who's counterfeiting it, it may be 1/100 the cost, or 1/10 the cost, of depending on the nature of the product. So having said that, you have to ensure your packaging, you have to ensure your distributor level involvement in making sure that they are aware that these products are not in the market, and if they are in the market, they are immediately able to inform the same to you. Now, coming to a small roundup of whatever I've discussed, we as a country, we as a judicial setup have really recognized trademarks over these years. We've grown in the last 20 years as far as being in sync with the TRIPS guidelines and all the protocols and the conventions. There is a lot of recognition by the courts as far as protecting the trademark is concerned. In fact, lately I was reading an article written by Justice Pratibha Singh where she had mentioned that Indian courts are recognizing trademarks. So trademark is geographical. So if you register a trademark in India, you're protected in India. However, the courts have gone further. In fact, Justice Pratibha Singh had mentioned in this particular session where she said that like Indian courts, the foreign court should also protect Indian brands. So a brand which is not registered in India but has an existence and a goodwill abroad has been protected by the courts in India. So the fact that the Indian judiciary is moving in a very great pace, taking IP very seriously, not like it was before that anybody could walk over your rights. They are taking it very seriously. They are having a huge impact on the industry. Injunctions in all genuine cases are happening, but as like I earlier said, the facts of delay and prima facie attention is what is most important. Courts have really recognized TM owners over the years. The trademark authorities have kind of really streamlined the process, being computerized. So having said that, since the judiciary, the trademark authority are taking steps to protect trademark owners, similarly trademark owners need to take that extra step of protecting their mark themselves so that they can approach the court and the bodies at the right time rather than with the delay. Numerous precedents have been set up by the courts as far as trademark protection is concerned. Now coming back to the fact of registration. So today, trademark registration is considered as the most easiest job on the planet. Anybody can file a trademark application. Not realizing that you get the trademark application filed, but the subsequent steps of prosecution is something people need to be aware of, people should be hands-on. The process of office action, opposition are basically very crucial for the grant of your trademark. So while you're filing a trademark, it is of paramount importance that due attention and time is given to the particular brand that you're going to register, because you're going to invest a lot of money behind that brand. So what is important is substantial amount of search should be done, and you have to ensure that you are far away from anything or anyone who can claim that your mark is going to be similar or deceptively similar. The whole idea is try to coin a brand of your own where you'll have a distinctive nature, a distinctive character, and which is totally different from what already there is in the market. It is a tough task because even the trademark office database will not be a guaranteed answer to your search, but it will still give you a very clear approach as to what you need to do. So preliminary advice and preliminary attention to your brand has to be given, so that once you file and you invest on the brand, you do not lose that money and you do not waste or end up being sued for infringement by a third party. So I would always suggest it's always good to be creative rather than to take ideas or spoof of ideas from existing trademarks or diluting existing trademarks. So having said that, these are the options that are there for you to protect your mark. Start beginning with the registration and going on to protecting your mark. Your awareness and your being hands-on to the market is most important for protecting your trademark. So I guess I'm open to questions if anybody has any questions.
Nishu. Click on that. Nishu. Send request.
Okay.
Send request.
Good evening, sir. I'm Nishu. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, sir? Your time and for great session. So I have few questions from viewers. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, Nishu, just give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, Nishu, I can hear you. Hello? I can hear you.
Yes. You can hear me, sir?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. We have a question. How about online hearing, especially in COVID circumstances? Is tribunal ready to proceed online hearing?
They are doing online hearings, Nishu, but again, like now being a litigator, I always say there's nothing as having a face-to-face hearing. But yes, unfortunately, in these circumstances, we are all going through online hearings. So online hearings are happening.
Another question is, sir, can anyone register domain name under trademark act?
Sorry, domain name?
Yes.
Domain name under Trademark Act. I can't hear you.
Now you can hear me?
Huh?
You can hear me now, sir?
Yeah, Nishu.
Sir, can anyone register domain name under trademark act?
Yes, you can.
Okay, sir. Next question is, sir, what about defamation cases arising out of published book? Will published also be held liable under this act?
So defamation under?
Under arising out of published book.
No. See, defamation is a totally different aspect altogether. It is not provided for under the Trademarks Act. But what is your? I still can't get your question. Defamation arising out of a published book,
Yeah.
that will not fall under this.
Okay, sir. Is it compulsory to register a trademark in India?
It's not compulsory. So let me
Okay,
explain that to you. Let me explain that to you. Registration gives you a statutory right under the Trademark Act. So today, if you are a registered trademark, like I said, in case of an infringement, the onus of proof is not on you to show that this trademark belongs to you. The person you sue or who the defendant in the case is. The onus on proof is on that person or that company to show that they are well within their rights to use the trademark, or they are a prior user, whatever be the case. But once you are registered, the onus of proof is not on you. Now, having said that, registration is not mandatory. There's nothing that says that you have to have your trademark registered. For example, you register a trademark in 2020.
Yeah.
I am using the same trademark since 2015.
Yes.
That registration is invalid. So where I spoke about cancellation or rectification of the register, I can go under that process to get your mark off the register, since I am a prior user and I'm able to prove that I'm a prior user. So registration primarily gives you a statutory right, but that statutory right cannot take away rights under tortious law or under common law which are available to the other person.
Sir, my another question is, what cannot be registered as trademark, and can we use our logo on company's letterhead without trademark?
Yes, you can use your logo. What cannot be registered is clearly defined under Section 9 and 11. If you see Section 9 and 11 of the Act, it clearly defines what cannot be registered. As far as using your logo, whether it is registered or not, using it on your letterhead, you're not committing any violation. That is your discretion. You choose not to go for a statutory protection. That is your wish.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any more questions anyone has? Okay, in that case, thank you everyone, and thank you for being patient enough to bear with me. Thank you so much.